Hey guys, it's Julian. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make organic house in the style of Christian Loeffler and Kiasmos. We're going to be talking not just about how to make the music, but I'm also going to be showing you how to do your own vocals like the ones that you heard from me in the beginning of this video. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI presets, everything like that is available at the top of the description. Thank you very much for the support. Every sale really helps keep me going, so I keep bringing you guys new videos every single day. Plus, you get a bunch of awesome samples to work with. Once again, link is at the top of the description. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so we've got the project file here. We're at 117 BPM. The first thing up here is the kick groove. So you can hear it starts with the kick up here. We just have this one, which is made with 2 layers. So I have this kick, which was really solid in the low end, but as you can hear, doesn't quite have the right level of mid-range and highs. And then we have this kick, which is really solid in the mid-range and highs, but as you can hear, doesn't quite have the low end. So then we put these two together, and you get this one really full, fat sounding kick. So that's why I made the kick. You can see you really don't need too much processing either, because it's just like a really solid sounding kick already that's going to punch through the mix as long as you level it right. And the only key here to keep in mind is just making sure that you line up these start points. You can see I did it on this one too, where it's even less, but like literally just dragging it from there to there makes the biggest difference. And the reason why is because if those don't line up, you're going to get kind of like it's not going to be like that proper like just one kick, you know what I mean? You're going to have like and it's not going to be as punchy. And you'll see what I mean if I put this here and then I move it back. It's subtle, but the kick hits a lot harder if you line those up. And then for the actual groove part of the kick groove, we have these bounce kicks. So you can hear these are just some nice deep like tom style layers, and those just bounce off of the kick just to kind of add a bit more groove in the low end, you know. It's about making a more like nuanced sort of percussion groove, because obviously like we have the kick and we have all the percussion, but that's still very much in the mid-range and highs. So this creates some percussion that's going to be in the low end. And you can hear it just makes you like bob your head a bit more. Just fills out that beat nicely. Then we have the bass. Now this bass line is actually pretty simple, because you can see it's just long held out notes following the chord progression. Now we have a pretty straightforward pop style chord progression here. But what makes it exciting is taking this third note and putting it down an octave. Like usually if you were doing this chord progression, you would go. You've heard that in probably a lot of pop songs. But then just taking that and instead putting that down kind of like revoices it. And that's really what a lot of this music is about, I think, is like taking those kind of more like sort of contemporary pop chord progressions, but then really flipping it on its head and doing little things every step of the way like that to make it a bit more exciting. So like having that go down there instead of up where you're expecting it to go. And also it sounds nice because you're getting that nice deep synth note. Now for the sound with this bass, you can see it's made with 2 layers. We have our main bass and then our sub. So the main bass is a really simple patch. It's just a sine wave and a saw wave here going into a low pass filter inside a wavetable. The thing about this bass though is it's really more one of those ones about not messing it up, right? Like we could sit here and try and make this like a respace, or we could add some unison, or we could add a bunch of saturation. But what I found when I was doing all those things is like, as tempting as it may be, you know, that really just takes away from like that really solid mid-range. Like this one's really just about like not even getting the highs from the saw wave, but just that nice like growl that you get there. So you really just kind of want to make it simple like this and not overthink it too much. And then for the sub, this is made with operator, and this is just made with a sine wave and then a little bit of FM from this other sine wave here, and then that's going into some drum bus just to make it a bit fatter and more full. And then on the group here, all we have is just a compressor side chaining these to the kick, and that's it for the bass. Then we have the clap. which the clap is made with 3 layers. So we have this hand clap, another hand clap, and then this just regular, like, more kind of like clap. And so with these kinds of claps, you'll notice it's all completely dry. There's no processing going on, but it's all about the way that it's programmed in. And in particular, if you look, you can see that we have, so this clap hits right on the beat right there, but then the hand claps, one's a little bit before the beat, and then one's a little bit after. And what happens now when you get that is it's more realistic to like a real clap, right? Because let's say you just recorded like a group of 3 people clapping. They're not going to perfectly clap all right on the beat at the exact same time like that. Like, it's going to be a little bit of like a kind of like all together. So that's essentially what we're recreating here. And this is just going to make your clap feel a lot more organic and a lot more live. I mean, you can hear it, like, if I just play that one, like, we'll play it with the kick. Obviously, like, it hits, but it's just not quite as nice as, like, having those layers over top of that. And yeah, so that's pretty much the secret there to the clap. Now, the other secret going on here is you'll notice the hand claps are all like kind of different, just random pitches. And the goal of this is to kind of make things feel a little bit more live and a little bit less like rigid. Because if everything is playing the exact same note every time, it's going to sound exactly the same, right? Like this over and over is going to get kind of boring. But if we take that and pitch it around like that, now you hear it slightly changing every time. Now this only works if you have the layers. Like if you just had one of these, it's kind of obvious what you're doing. But when you start to put a few together like that, it just sounds like different claps. And then when you couple that with the one that's steady, you can't even tell that it's just the same clap. But it's going to make things a lot more live and organic feeling. Then we have this Foley percussion. So the way that this is made is I just recorded myself grabbing, like, I think it was like these fingerboards, like some keys. I just had the lighter drop. I had like remote, essentially random objects that you have on your desk. And what you do is you record yourself. You're kind of hearing it right now. Just going like this. You can get rid of the keys if you don't want the jingle in there. But as you can hear, you're creating like all these different little like sort of quote unquote like ASMR type sounds, right? Like this little just like crunchy percussions and stuff. And the idea is that you're not going to be going for any specific rhythm. When you're recording, all you're trying to do is just record maybe like a minute of yourself just fumbling things around essentially. And what's going to happen then is then rhythms are going to get created out of that. Because you can see like, okay, for example here, like this one. So this was like a chop of me just playing it randomly. But look at that. That's a 16th note right there. Or here, there's an 8th note. And it's a little bit behind the grid, but that's what's going to give it that feeling. You know, that's what's going to give it that liveliness. So essentially, this is how you want to approach it. You know, this, that's a 16th note. That's a 16th note. And again, this was not premeditated at all. This was not like carefully recording. It was literally just me just shaking stuff around into this exact microphone that I'm talking into right now, this exact position. And this is how you can make this kind of percussion. And the reason I think this is important to talk about is because a lot of people out there are under the impression that, like, you know, you have to get your Zoom recorder or some crazy recording setup. You know, you go out in the woods and you do all this work and, like, record all these crazy sounds. And it's like, you know, that might seem interesting for a YouTube video. That might, like, be good for content. I've done that before on this channel. But in my opinion, like, it's kind of a waste of your time, because at the end of the day, you're just recording different like crunches and different little like textures. Now, if you happen to find an interesting sound that's so interesting that you need to go and record it because you're not going to be able to recreate that at home, then yes, that's why that process exists. But in terms of like this kind of stuff, like, I don't know, in my opinion, it's kind of like extra. Like, you just really don't need to do all that. And I think that what happens is people kind of think that that is going to be a big part of their process later on, so they don't spend as much time doing the little details. But like, yeah, you really got to make sure like it's more about the chopping than it is the actual like recording of the sounds. But so many people, again, like romanticize this idea of like recording Foley noises. It sounds crazy, but it really is like a big thing. And I just think that, you know, we don't need to be spreading that so much, because ultimately it's going to make people think that it's a lot harder than it is, when really, like, a lot of people could have just had this type of percussion a while ago if they were willing to just do it this way, you know? So I'll show you, like, my original recording sounds like this. I even, like, talked at some point. There's some nice claps in there. Like, a lot of it's kind of random, but again, like, this is the best way to do it. And then what happened is I just took little chunks from that, little quarter notes like this. And then what's happening is, so on top of that, we have a high-pass filter in this utility and a compressor side chaining into the cake. So that's the first rhythm there. You're getting that side chain. So you're getting the rhythm that's created by these, which obviously is like kind of nice. But then the side chain. So now we're adding that quarter note kind of pulse to it. And then on top of that, I have this eighth note LFO filter over here. So you can hear it's just a low pass filter, it's about there, so it's kind of making things a bit more crunchy and a bit more mid-rangey. But then this has this LFO doing eighth notes, so now you're getting the rhythm from the Foley, the rhythm from the side chain, and the rhythm of burr, 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 burr over top of it. And this ultimately is what brings it to life. Again, like, just recording like a Foley sound and just dropping it in, that's really not it. Like, you need to do something like this to kind of make it fit in there, because it's adding a lot of rhythm. But if I get rid of that, it doesn't quite like fit in that same way. So again, with the Foley percussion, just making sure that you're not overthinking it, and you know, it's really more about just kind of getting started with it and then seeing what's going to come out than it is like premeditating every single recording that you're going to record. Because it's like, you know, if you know exactly what you want the Foley percussion to sound like, why don't you just program in some drum sounds from like a Vengeance pack, you know, or something like that. It's like, the point of this is to get random inspiration. And yeah, then we have the shaker. You know, pretty straightforward, just like nice organic sounding one. I've got a side chain to the cake. Then we have our hi-hat, which you'll notice it's 2 layers. So we have this one, which is steady at the same volume, and then this really bright one, which goes like tss, 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 tss. Like it's louder and then quieter. And that just kind of is like a subtle way to give this a little bit of a different groove, because instead of being that more standard just like house, now it's a little bit more nuanced. It's you know. And that's all just coming from the groove that's created by these hi-hats. And those are just going to a bit of reverb. And then we have this droning chord. So all this is doing is it's playing this first chord from the chord progression here. It's just a B major. Or excuse me, B minor. You can hear that just drones on that same chord over top of everything. And yeah, so you can hear having something just playing that one chord like that can sound really, really good. And all it is for the synth sound here is it's just 2 saw waves in analog. We have a bit of vibrato. I've got some reverb. It's being sidechained to the cake, and then it's being high passed. And yeah, so that's all that is, but it just adds like a nice layer. And then we have these grain chords. And so this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about taking like this more standard poppy chord progression, but then just getting more creative with it. You can see like we have it. Na, 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 na. The exact same melody is happening there, but then the notes on top are what's changing. So you can see like these are pretty much like, it's not really too much like reason here. Here there actually is just a basic major chord, but with those extra voices on top. But basically, it's just taking notes from the scale that you're in, and then just adding them while those root notes are just constantly going. Like, that's how I made this. You know, it's not really that hard once you're following the scales. But just establishing that chord progression first is going to be the key. And it's just like finding stuff that's going to fit really nicely with where you're going melodically. It's a lot more about just knowing the scale and then using your ear than it is like, you know, very like exact, like it's going to be this every single time. And then for the sound on this one, this is made using the granulator. So what I did here is it's granular synthesis with, I recorded a sample of myself playing guitar, like that guitar right back there. It's that one, the Silvertone. Love that guitar. And what's happening is I just played a C. So it's just going to be like, essentially whichever note you play on the keyboard is where it'll play in the actual synth. But then what's happening here is you can see we have the spray knob turned up. So it's jumping all around the sample. And it creates this really interesting organic texture here, where it's like a pad, but it's not just that same old like kind of saw wave and square wave feel, or even like sine waves. Like there's something a little bit more exciting and a little bit more fresh here. And that's the idea. It's kind of like exploring how we can take instruments like this that have been heard so many times, but make it something that you've never heard before. And that's just going through some reverb, a bit of compressor, just side chaining it, and then a high pass filter. But obviously this one's not really about the processing. It's more just about making the cool sound at the start, and then playing good chords with it. Then we have this piano. So yeah, this is just this like very simple melody. You can see it's only 4 notes, or actually 5 notes here. But it's just like a simple, kind of catchy, you know, it really feels like some like 90s like house type of melody. But then we're doing it with this like super dreamy piano sample, and then combining that with these chords, it just adds this really dreamy and nice layer in there. Now another good thing about this one is it's adding like some mid-range. Like if I turn this off, you can see we're kind of missing that like deep low mid-range. And so that's how we're thinking about this. Like when you're adding all these layers, of course it's a lot of melodic layers, more than I would usually use probably, but it works because everything is in its own place. Like this is in its own place. From that. So it's all gonna fit. And yeah, so for the sound on this one, it's just this piano sample. You know, it's like a more soft felt style piano, like you hear in these style of tracks, where essentially they take the piano and you put felt between the string and the beater, so when the beater hits it, it's a lot softer. And you get this more kind of like deep sound like this. And then I just have that going through some reverb and a compressor side chaining into the kick. But I want to show you that, like, you know, if you have the right sound and the right sample and you're playing the right notes with it, you don't need some crazy expensive piano VST or like some contact library or something. You know, just having like the ear to choose really good samples is going to go very far. And if you want this one, links at the top of the description. Then we have this music box, which same deal, that's just a nice sample. You can hear that just plays this cool melody. Yeah, it's like a nice kind of melodic and rhythmic element because it hits on the upbeats there. And yeah, pretty simple notes there, you know, just kind of a little background element, going through some reverb and another compressor side chaining into the kick. Then we have this art. So So this might seem like a crazy ARP. It's actually not that complicated. A lot of the notes are just B, you can see. But then we have all these top notes up here. So these are all still just kind of notes from that B minor scale, like that's the key that we're in. But essentially it's about like kind of the rhythm here. Because what we're doing is, you can see, I have the velocities on most of these down a little bit. But then on these ones where it goes dun dun dun, that rhythm, you can hear those because the velocities are up a little bit. And you can hear, I think that's the missing link a lot of the time, because like if we just take this ARP and get rid of that velocity stuff and just have them all at the same velocity, honestly it still sounds cool, but there's just a level of like detail and nuance and kind of professionalism that you can't quite put your finger on if you don't know what it is. But it's essentially that. It's just the way that we're using these velocities here to create a more dynamic pattern. And then also, it's not just the velocities. You can't just do any notes and just change the velocities to make it sound cool. But it's using the velocities to accentuate particular notes. Like how you notice the highest notes usually have the loudest velocity here. So you get that da-da-na-na-na-na-na. Like, it's not just turning up the velocities randomly, but it's choosing, like, what the rhythm you want to create is. Like, in this case, I want to create dun 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 dun. So that's what those are the notes we're bringing out with the velocity, and then all the other ones are still in there, kind of creating this nice solid foundation. And yeah, that's essentially how that's working. Now for the sound, it's made with 2 layers, and the only reason we're using 2 layers here is just because there's only 2 oscillators inside of analog. You can essentially think of this as one patch because it's all the exact same settings. It's just that the second one is just here so I can have that 5th in there. So what the synth patch is essentially this first one is just a saw wave and a square wave. The saw wave is an octave down, and then the second one here is a saw wave, an octave up, plus 7 semitones, so it's an octave and a 5th. If I get rid of that, you can hear it's kind of, it's mostly the same sound, but that just adds a nice kind of layer of dimension there. And for the actual filter here, what's happening is, you can see, we've got the filter frequency. I'm moving that just throughout the track, but then there's also an LFO on there. There's an envelope on there, and then on top of that, you can see I have this envelope to velocities. Essentially, that's what's making it so that the lower the velocity is, the lower the filter frequency will be. And then the last thing here is just a vibrato. So there's a lot of movement on this. And then again, it's the same exact settings on this one. And that's a big part of this ARP too. Like, if we turn off the LFO, if we turn off the filter frequency, automation, obviously it's good notes, but that stuff is making a really huge difference. So it's like kind of taking the whole thing, every single element that you can make, to essentially like bring it to life, and just animating each one, each step of the way. And then it's going to a bit of echo, a bit of reverb. I have some drum bus on there. The compressor sidechaining into the kick, and then a high pass filter. And the last thing here is the vocal. I need you to get the light. I need you to light. So this is me singing. I just kind of recorded these like random vocals. I need you. Kind of like my Blink-182 voice there. And some falsetto stuff. But I wanted to show you guys how you can make these vocals with your own voice. Because I think a lot of people think like, okay, I want to make like a cool like All for Arnold's Christian Loeffler style like track. Like, we gotta find some random singer that sings opera in like a field somewhere. But actually, you don't need to do that. A lot of times, if you know how to kind of work with your vocals, and you know how to essentially like not do too much, you can actually make pretty good vocals, even if you're not much of a singer. So here are the dry vocals. I need you to get the light. So the first thing is, you have to get the pitches down. You have to be able to go And you can see I'm even kind of flying a little bit, but like you see mine kind of jumping around. But then like if you're singing like a phrase, it's not that hard to go, I need you. Yeah, you can get that, right? Like, even if you're not much of a singer, like, you can pretty much get that. You just have to be willing to do it. And then you can do little things to kind of finesse it. Like here, I detuned this one a little bit. I think I detuned that one even more. That one's at a whole -1. Like, just kind of taking your vocals and being able to work with them. And then these ones, I didn't pitch at all. But when I say not do too much, this one, obviously I could have gone, I don't want to sound awful. But because I knew to just go, just like a simple riff that's catchy, that you can easily remember. It's like I'm not showing the bad side, you know what I mean? It's like, obviously, again, there's a version of this where it's me just going, for like 3 hours into a microphone, and like, I could put that out. But again, like, if you know how to, like, not do too much, even over here, it's like, instead of trying to record an extra little chunk for this, just take these, which are already working really well, and this one, and use it. You know what I mean? Like, just knowing how to not mess it up, essentially. And then it's just going through some pretty standard effects, a bit of echo, a bit of reverb, some drum bus, and a high-pass filter. And there you are. So that is how you make the vocals, and that is also going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets. Everything from this video is available right in the top of the description for just $5. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much for all the support, guys. Everybody who picks up these sample packs, it really helps keep me going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every single day. I don't make a whole lot just off of YouTube, but the sample packs really help so I can keep going. And yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.